It's so hard to see the big picture sometimes. Think about the finish line, the goalpost when you're in the middle of trying to get there, when you're stuck in the grind. You kind of know that it's going to be hard, but you don't realize how hard it is until you try to do it. I'm feeling like a lot of the same stuff that I felt when I started learning how to code and wanting to get a job and thinking if it was going to be possible and as I'm doing this now with like indie hacking and trying to build out some of my ideas and trying to create a business and become an entrepreneur and live off of whatever I can create, it's a different grind, but the same kind of thoughts and worries and doubts start coming to your mind. They're not the same, but it feels the same. For instance, when I was learning how to code, I was worried about like not having a college degree, not having a boot camp, not even being a high school graduate, not being qualified no matter how much I learned to be able to get a job. And now as I'm indie hacking or being a wannabe indie hacker, I'm feeling things like not really knowing anything about business, not really ever building something on my own, not understanding marketing, not understanding what it's like to actually be an entrepreneur. I know that YouTube has kind of helped me dip my toes into entrepreneurship. And a lot of people will be like, oh, being a YouTuber is not like being a real entrepreneur. But I say that that's not true. I say that there's a lot of things that when you start doing YouTube full time and you start thinking of it as a business, you start thinking like a businessman or an entrepreneur. And I have an LLC. I pay myself through an S Corp. I do my taxes. I deal with sponsors, which are kind of like dealing with clients in a way. You also deal with kind of having freelancers or employees when you deal with editors, when you deal with people who make thumbnails for you, when you have to hire out some of the work that you need done on YouTube as well. And I figure out how to like try to make more money, how to try to sell stuff. And at the end of the year, I'm doing spreadsheets and income statements and all of those things so that I can understand like where I'm spending money, where I'm making money, what my revenue was for the year, what my profits were. And that's all real business, but you're also just making videos and uploading them to YouTube. Some people won't consider that a business, but I think it was a good way for me to introduce myself into trying to be an entrepreneur and making internet money, right? Because I have been able to do that. And while I don't make as much as I probably can from YouTube, and I don't really explore other avenues that YouTube could make me money in, like I've said before, like courses and trying to sell more stuff or making my own products that I can sell to my audience, it's a business, but it doesn't feel that way all the time. And then when you set out to try to build SaaS products, it's like a whole nother animal. It's completely different from YouTube in a lot of ways, but there's some similarities and things that I will transfer over my knowledge from, running my business and my LLC into building some of these things that are going to need things like revenue reports and hiring people out if I ever need developers and some high level business stuff that does go into SaaS that I can transfer over from YouTube. But at the end of the day, I still feel like a fraud. I have a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to trying to build stuff. Even though I'm a developer and I'm able to build these things, I'm not a developer who's ever sold anything. I'm not someone who's actually ever done any kind of agency work. I have very minimal freelance work, so I don't know how to like deal with clients, and I'm not really trying to freelance. So that doesn't really transfer over to trying to build my own SaaS products and my own business ideas. The imposter syndrome is real. And then the lack of really knowing how to get there. When I was learning how to code, there was a lot of like not knowing the path because I was self-taught, a lot of fumbling around, feeling like I was doing things that weren't really helping me get to the ultimate goal, feeling like I was kind of just aimlessly trying to figure things out in order to get to this thing that I wanted to get to. And at that time, it was get a job. And I'm doing that a lot now. I'm seeing a lot of the same things I did. I watch YouTube videos, I listen to blogs and podcasts and books. I do all of that when I have some downtime because I'm focused on actually building the thing, because I know that if I do too much of that, it becomes procrastination, and I know better than that. So that's something that I've learned from my experiences of like trying to build things and learn how to code and build my YouTube channel. And I get that there's going to be some of that, but I forget how hard it is when you're in the middle of doing it. I've just been struggling a lot lately. I start to think like, is it all worth it? Is it actually going to happen? You see a lot of successful indie hackers or people that have built successful SaaS companies that either provide them a lifestyle business where they're able to just make enough money to afford their lifestyle, or that have actually built out big companies or big-ish companies that end up making the money, and they hire employees and they grow it to be something bigger. And listening to them, many of them will tell you that they had so many failures before they saw success, and they had so many things that they did wrong. And I try to learn from those people by consuming some of the content and things that they've created, and an understanding of that being the process. But at the same time, I'm like super worried because I'm working my ass off trying to build something, and I'm not sure if that's going to be one of my failures. The truth is, statistically, there's a good chance that a lot of the things I'm doing now are going to be failures. Thinking and knowing, or trying to convince myself that these failures are going to end up eventually getting me to where I need to be successfully, or to my point of success, the destination of my journey. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're stuck in the mud, when you're walking through the cave and you're in there and you're just trying to crawl through everything, and you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, and you're not really sure if you're going to make it. And I'm feeling that so much right now. I think that this is an aspect of entrepreneurship and indie hacking and doing the business thing that not many people talk about, because I've noticed that many of the people that I've watched and the things I've heard are all from people that made it. They made it to the other side. Even when I talked about learning how to code and getting a job, I had already been a developer for years. I had already been a self-taught dev who made it. And I was just retroactively trying to go back and think about the things that helped me while I was doing it. The thoughts and the way I felt were completely different than what I talked about after I made it. And I feel that talking about this helps me a little bit, because it helps me kind of process some of my thoughts, and it almost turned into a bit of a vlog therapy session about what I'm feeling right now with trying to do all this stuff. And I think that it's a good aspect to talk about because you don't see this side of it. And it's tough, we've been dipping into our savings a little bit. We've been trying to figure out what the best route for us to continue doing this for a little while. I'm trying to set up a time frame where I feel like if I can't make it by this time, I got to pursue other avenues, to think of different things that I can do to maybe get some contract work, or really get serious about freelancing so that I can start making some money. Because while I make some money on YouTube, it's not enough to pay the bills long term. It's also a real hamster wheel and grind, and it's not passive enough for what I'm trying to do. And, passive income is bullshit. There's no such thing as truly passive income. There are times when things do get passive, and the idea of building SaaS products is that there's more potential for passiveness. I don't know what word that is that I'm looking for, but I understand that. I know that, but the grind of YouTube is different. You're very reliant on algorithms, and you can argue to say, well, if you build a SaaS product, you're reliant on different type of algorithms. You're reliant on SEO and search engine and marketing and pay-per-click ads and things like that. But at least it feels like you have a little bit more control of the product, and you can make improvements that potentially help the users and make your product better. Where with YouTube, I can try to make videos better, but at the end of the day, I start playing the game of the algorithm, and I keep going back to YouTube because that's the thing that I've done. But the struggle is real. I really want to address that because I think it's valuable. I think that many of us who try to do something like this kind of feel lost, because it is a bit of a lonely road to travel when you're trying to be a solo founder, when you're trying to be a solo entrepreneur. And while I am collaborating with someone and I have been able to talk it out with other people, and that's good, but at the end of the day, you're still kind of in it on your own. And that's what it was like with being a self-taught developer too. Even though there were people that helped me, even though I went to meetups and I met other developers and I found some pseudo mentors and I found people that were able to offer me a bit of guidance, at the end of the day, it was on me to spend the time learning to code. It was on me to go to those meetups and meet people. It was on me to continue the grind, even though I wasn't sure I was going to make it. And I think that that's offered me a bit more of hope I guess is the word I'm looking for. And I see that hope could be wishful thinking, and wishful thinking might lead you to not accomplishing things, because I know a lot of people who wishfully think for things and don't get anywhere because there's a lot of action that's involved in actually trying to get to where you want to be. And I'm putting in that action now, and it's really rough. It's really hard. I'm still constantly like trying to figure things out. It's tough when you're just constantly trying to figure things out and you don't feel like you know what you're doing, and you don't know what you're doing. You're just figuring it out. I know that there's still a big part of my audience that is learning how to code. There's still a lot of people that watch my content that are trying to figure it out. I try to make those videos for like younger people in their 20s where I kind of offer some of my advice, even though I don't know if I'm the best person to take advice from, because I'm still kind of a mess and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think that it's okay. I think that you can be in the grind, and as long as you're like working towards something, there's going to be a lot of value that you gain from working towards something. It's not all in vain. It's not lost if you spend time working a little bit too much on something that doesn't really return you the value immediately. At least you learn from that experience. At least you learn like, hey, I'm not going to do that thing again next time because it wasn't worth it. Or, hey, I did that thing, and even though I didn't use the thing that I worked on for a week, or the programming language, or the concepts and things that I was studying for a little bit, like there's still value that you gain from spending that time on those things. And you learn from that in the long run, and you kind of become wiser and more experienced because of those things. You know, there's a lot of probably building out features that I probably don't need to build right now. And there's a lot of like little things that I'm focusing on that probably aren't as important. And I think that's part of the failures that lead to your success. And I think that there's value in that. And I want to share this because I remember when I was learning how to code, I spent a lot of time like learning different programming languages at the beginning, right? Because I would start with like JavaScript, and then that felt too hard. And then I moved over to PHP, which felt like, oh, maybe I should learn this because it's popular. And then I spent a little bit of time learning WordPress, and then I spent a little bit of time learning this and that. And then I ended up going back to like learning JavaScript. But now fast forward 7 years, while that PHP experience didn't really stick with me because I was just too new when I was learning how to code, and it was one of the earlier things that I tried to learn apart from like Ruby and Rails and all that stuff. Now, guess what? I'm back in PHP land. Maybe there's some residual concepts and things that I remember from PHP. I doubt it, but it just goes to show you that sometimes you come full circle. You end up doing or coming across the same problems or previous problems or things that you once tried to learn or use in the future, and then you kind of know better. One of the things that I want to start doing is just trying to provide more value. I think about like how far I've come from when I was younger, and I think about like where I could have been had my life been different. And I think about these things because I was just recently kind of chit-chatting with my brother-in-law. We've been hanging out a lot lately. We're working out, ice baths. We sit in the same office and we shoot the shit a lot. And he's probably one of my closer friends. And, you know, he asked me like, man, like you dropped out of high school and like, you know, this stuff? Because I'm showing him the app that I'm building, and I'm showing him like some of the thought process behind things, and I'm showing him like the payment processing with Stripe and setting that up and how that works and how it saves to my database, and I'm like explaining what webhooks are to him, and he's an electrician and he doesn't really know, but it really like surprised him that I can do all this, even though he knows that I've done this as a career for the last few years. I guess he didn't understand how complicated it was. And like, he knows a lot about like my background, because like I said, we've been friends for a while, and he's like, man, you're a high school dropout. You were like a druggie when you were younger. You were, you know, in and out of jail when you were a teenager, and you did a lot of stupid stuff, and you'd like learn this stuff later in life. And he was asking me like what made you learn this? And I was like, I don't know. It was kind of weird. You know, I just kind of heard about it and decided to give it a try after I had already tried a few other things, and kind of felt like that was getting nowhere when I was trying to learn like networking and going for my CompTIA certs, and then kind of accidentally falling into wanting to learn how to code, and then seeing how far I've come in 7 years, and like being able to actually do this as a job, get 6 figures, and know what I'm doing. Like, I'm very confident that I know what I'm doing. I'm a decent developer. I have a hard time calling myself a senior level dev, but I'm probably there. I definitely am a solid mid-level developer for sure, but I think that that's part of the imposter syndrome and just feeling like I never know how good I actually am at something. And I'm not someone who thinks he's great because I realize there's still so much that I don't know, but just realizing like how far I've come in 7 years. And then you hear people talk about how many people will overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in like 5 or 10 years. And I think about this grind that I'm in now of like trying to build these SaaS products. And I built that World Schooling website, and that's kind of not really going to go anywhere because I'm having a really hard time figuring out like the pricing model and like how I would sell that. And I don't see it making money, but there was a lot of learning that I did with that because I wrote it in Next.js, and then I was like, I hate Next.js. I don't really hate Next.js. I think it's a good tool for what you use it for, but I think it's overused and not the best tool for everything. And then I rewrote it in Laravel because I kept hearing good things about Laravel, and that taught me so much that now when I'm building this new thing, I have like a good foundation on Laravel, and I'm learning more about Laravel, and I'm using Filament PHP for my admin panels, and I'm learning about that library, and I'm getting deeper and deeper into a framework that I really enjoy. And like, I'm still building on top of what I've already have as a foundation, and being able to know that the grind is just part of the process. And if I think about what I've been able to do in the last 6 months after we got rid of our house and put our things in storage and went to go travel, and thinking about like the next year, because I'm giving myself a solid year to really see if I can keep this going. And I've talked it over with my wife, and I'm like, if we can kind of go back to Thailand, which we are, and go back to Southeast Asia, which we will be, and I can really like focus and get to work how I have been able to for the last few months, because that was really when I was able to like kind of code every day and work every day. If I can do that for another year, I think I can get really far in building this application and coming up with other ideas, and then trying to explore different ideas of like what I can maybe build moving forward, or like different product ideas and different things that I can maybe do at YouTube to try to like give back and provide value, but at the same time, like try to make some money from it. And it always sounds sleazy. It sounds hard when you try to tell your audience like, hey, I'm going to make money from you. But I do believe like if you provide value, then it's not a big ask to, ask people to pay for it. And I'm trying to figure that out. And it's not like what I want to do right now, but I think that it'll all come back around full circle, right? And it'll eventually all work itself out. And I think that when you're in the grind, you think too short term. You think about like the next few months, you think about like the next 6 months, the next year, and you don't think about like where this grind will take you in 5 years if you keep it going. And while I'm giving myself a year window, it's a window of time for me to make sure that I'm on track for doing the things I want to do, and to be able to reevaluate my situation when I get to that time frame, because you kind of got to set timeframes for your goals. And if things aren't working, then you got to adjust, because if you keep doing the same thing and you're not getting the results that you want from it, then it's time to reevaluate. Like, that's just something that you should think about, and something that I'm aware of. Feels like it'll all work itself out, and I have to like keep reminding myself that none of this that I'm doing is in vain, and that all of this experience that I have from learning how to code, from working as a developer, from now trying to build my products, or whatever you want to call them. I have a hard time putting a name to what I'm doing, because I don't feel like a founder, and I don't feel like an indie hacker, because I'm not really making any money from it. So how can I really call myself an entrepreneur if I'm not making money from it? And working and working and working and not seeing any return in investment feels like you're just wasting your time. And it's just part of the process. And you have to trust the process. You always hear that. I've said it many times. I've said it when it comes to like learning how to code. Like, if you follow the steps and you do the thing, eventually you'll get to what you're trying to do. It's just going to be hard on the way there. You're not going to be sure if you're doing things right. You're not going to be sure if you're going to eventually get there. But as long as you stick to it, you'll gain results from it, and you'll be a better person, and hopefully you'll actually accomplish the goals you're trying to set out to do. And that's all I wanted to say in this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little vlog check-in video. I'm trying to upload and be more consistent, but it's been kind of hard, and I'm just trying to put something out there to share my thoughts and maybe help a few people who are in the grind right now like I am. All right. With all that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.